listen hard. Stick to the basics. Stick to the basics. Stick to the basics.
What is up, YouTube? Live via satellite here, and today we are talking Kingdom, Manga chapter 554. And today, guys, we got ourselves yet another Heki chapter. I know, you guys are just bursting at the seams with excitement. Like, who does not want to spend an entire chapter basking in the glory of the Heki greatness? But in all seriousness, guys, we knew this time would come. We knew that we would have to endure some chapters of Heki getting his shine on. Because, you know, we said it. It was time for him to get to this next level, for him to prove that he's a capable general. And I have to say, I was really proud of him this chapter. And a lot of you guys may think I was proud of his tactics or this and that. No. I was proud for a whole nother reason, okay? Heki did something in this chapter that we don't see him do often. And I don't even know if anybody really picked up on it. It was one of Heki's greatest feats of all time. It's been 553 chapters and he has never pulled something off to this degree. I was actually shocked and stunned when I seen it. And you have to be very astute to pick this up. You have to be a Heki expert to pick this up. But in every single Heki panel this chapter, there was not one panel where he exceeded 3 beads of sweat. Okay? Not one panel did Heki exceed 3 beads of sweat. And you know, I have me a little Heki sweat index. And it ranges all the way from 1 to 10. With each number indicating how many beads of sweat are currently on Heki's face. With a 1 usually meaning that we're good, nothing to see here, you guys can move right along. And that's what 1 bead of sweat represents. But this Heki index goes all the way up to a 10 plus, which means 10 plus beads of sweat. If you see 10 plus beads of sweat, that is a catastrophic event, you know, because at that moment, Heki would be in a state of completely and utterly fucked. So today on the Heki index, we didn't even exceed a 3, which is brilliant because this is still below normal levels. So to all you Heki fans out there, you guys can definitely consider this a W. And I know this chapter for you guys is worthy of celebration. So celebrate, just don't get too carried away. Alright, so the chapter picks up pretty much where we left off last week, but we find out right away about a pretty important change. Right off the bat, last week it seemed like the Heki army may be facing an army around 15,000, maybe a little more, but now we see that he will also be facing an army that is also around 20,000 strong. And the messenger soon lets Heki know that both Baggio and the Figo King are also facing armies of that size. Hearing this news, it makes Heki wonder if the Zhao were actually able to see through their plans for the 9th day. Which I do have to say was pretty perceptive of Heki to recognize this. But at that moment, Katari also arrives on the scene, and we see that he's also come to the same conclusion that Heki did. And he proposes that the Mountain Tribe army should move to the front because the Heki army won't be able to weather an attack from such a large army. And this is their opportunity to fall back. Hearing this, Heki's men start to wonder if they should take Katari up on his offer. And Kitari in her language is telling them to hurry up and piss off, they're in the way. And I just love how she's like shooing them away like they're so insignificant. And with just a single bead of sweat on his face, Heki turns to Katari and says, "Thanks but no thanks. I, Heki, have promised Tanwa Dono to show her what sort of man I am." Hearing this, I'm not gonna lie, I had to do everything in my power to try not to laugh.
Can you feel the tension in the air right now? I know I can. I can feel it all the way down in my plums, getting all swollen, with a light blue hue to them, fresh and juicy, ready for the picking. Getting ready to take them to the farmer's market. Special 2 plums for 1.
And with that, Heki gives the order for his troops to move forward, letting them know that today is a day they will show the Quangrong their power. So over on the Zhao side, we get to see that Bunan is getting a report from his men that the enemy's moving towards them, and it's not actually the Mountain Tribe, but the Quinn army, which Bunan thinks are stupider than the Mountain Apes. And then he gives the command to throw the cavalry at them. And as the cavalry's moving in, we see Heki's commanders panicking at the sheer numbers advantage the Quangrong have. And Heki, always the voice of confidence, tells his men, do not panic. We just need to do what we've always done. But hearing this officer's face does not seem too assured, because he knows what him and the Heki army have always done.
You lose! Good day, sir!
And he even goes on to say that these Kwang numbers are just too much. But Heki cuts him off, saying it's fine, letting us know that after 8 days of fighting, even they would have grown used to them, in which case the only thing for them to do next is show their true strength. And you can see this has his men slightly confused. But as the Kwang cavalry gets closer, Heki says that's right, through fundamental tactics. And then the troopers in front drop their shields to reveal archers waiting behind them, which surprised the Mara tribe along with the Kwang who are on the wrong end of this attack. And it's actually a pretty successful first strike. Kitari even brings up the point that Heki drew them in on purpose. But obviously that alone wasn't going to be enough. So as the Kwang are regrouping the cavalry and continuing their charge forward, we see the shield troopers with their spears in hand, bracing for impact, taking out another round of Kwang enemies. But even then, we see that some are still able to break through. And here's where I thought maybe the Mara tribe would have to intervene, because as one Kwang soldier states, now that they've made it inside, they'd be pretty much unstoppable. But as he's yelling out to kill them all, he's taken out by more archers, which we find out from Katari have been embedded inside the Heki infantry to take care of any enemies that broke through. Then we actually see the Heki army in the front plug up some of the holes that were made to cut off the Kwang army inside of the formation, leaving them to be killed off by the sweepers while holding the lines at the front. Katari and Kitari are impressed in how fast they were able to close those gaps, and Kitari actually even questions whether the Heki army is made up of elite troops, which we all pretty much know the answer to.
Oh, hell no! Okay.
And as we see Heki looking over the battlefield, we get a more in-depth look at his strategy, which revolves around repair and defense. And he even admits that this isn't anything outrageous or special, and that he knows his army is the last place anyone would look if they were looking for flashiness. But what he can promise is that his men have practiced hundreds and hundreds of times every single fundamental tactic, and that he is confident that his men can carry out the orders of repair and defend faster and smoother than any other army. Which I kind of have to admit was pretty cool, that even Heki can be the best at something. And it just so happens that since it's the cavalry trying to take advantage of numbers and just charge in aimlessly, it actually works to Heki's advantage, where he can draw them in and cut them down as many times as necessary. And Heki even goes as far as to say that once a rhythm is established, there is nothing harder to deal with than a fundamental tactic. Back over at Katari and Kitari, they're in amazement about what Heki's doing. Katari actually says that he kind of underestimated Heki, but now realizes that this is what should be expected of a general of Quinn. But Kitari, never one to give Heki props, says it's pretty much the Kwang fault for being idiots. Then we get a small glimpse into the personality of Bunin. We get to see a little bit of why they call him the most ruthless of the three brothers. Because not only does he call his cavalry back, but he says that he wants the men who have just failed him executed. And at the same time, he's also given the order to send in his infantry. So I'm guessing this must be some sort of motivational tactic, because I would think the soldiers of the infantry would fight a little bit harder, knowing that if they fail, they're going to be killed anyway. And as the Kwang infantry is starting to advance, we see that just their infantry alone numbers close to 10,000. But unfazed by this, Heki gives the orders to switch out formations, telling them to form up their 5-man squads while at the same time taking into account their 50-man Zoku and 100-man Haku blocks. And as they begin to advance, it's noted by Heki's officers just how quick they were able to switch formations to prepare for infantry battle. And here I found it kind of odd that Heki's officers were the ones surprised at this speed. I mean, they've been at all the practices, so I can see them being shocked and caught off guard by some things, but this definitely shouldn't be one of them.
From the bottom.
Bro,
It's like a car seatbelt, like you just pull it and it'll still. This?
wait, is my tools?
Actually, both of them. Hey, I got both seatbelts completely loose.
Realizing that the bulk of both armies are mainly infantry, Heki calls out to Katari, realizing that he's going to need them sooner than expected now that the bulk of their forces are about to clash. Which Katari was on the same page with, but he also adds that he doesn't think that Bunin is this simple of a man, and warns that this advancing infantry is not his main attack, and that he would wager that his true offense won't show up until later on. So the Mariner Cavalry's plan is pretty simple and straightforward. What they're going to do is they're going to prepare for a charge on the right side. And once they see that the Heki infantry is beginning to falter, they'll cut in through the right to assist them. And if an opening presents itself, they'll try to go for Bunen's head. And Heki nods in agreement, but he also tells Katari not to be too reckless in his pursuit of Bunen's head, because he also intends to break through the center and take Bunen's head himself. And at that moment, we see that both infantries have engaged with each other, and that the real melee has begun. With this news, the Mera tribe begins to set off, and Kitari, never the one to miss an opportunity for Heki's slander, lets Heki know in her native language, of course, that she'll be sure to take Bunen's head right as Heki falls in battle. And Heki, having no idea what she's saying, but assuming it's well wishes, returns the gesture saying that he will be praying for her good fortune as well. And then we get one of the funniest panels I've seen in such a long time, where we see that Katari is realizing that he got absolutely the wrong idea about what she was saying. And as he's turning around to set off, his cape flaps in the wind like he's some sort of boss, which just pisses Katari off even more. And as they're all moving into position, they hear a huge commotion to the left. And Katari and Kitari realize that this has to be coming from Baggio's battlefield. And then we see that Baggio and his men have also already gotten started. And then we check in with the Figo King's army, who are very surprised to find out that not only has the Baggio army gotten things kicked off, but the Heki army as well is already in the midst of battle. This has the Figo King kinda upset, because he wanted to be the first one to get things started. But he says this is only due to the fact that the youngest of the brothers hasn't made a move yet due to his fear of him. So now he's falling behind, and we see him leading the way, slicing some Kwangrang bodies in half, which doesn't appear to have the youngest brother phased in the slightest. And with this, the report is given to Yotawa that all three armies have gotten started. Hearing this news, we see her look to the sky and say that it's been a long time since she last felt this. With her men puzzled in the background, she continues on saying, this sensation of being balanced on a knife's edge. And we see that now at the Battle of Ryoyu, the fateful 9th day with everything gambled upon it, has finally begun. And that was the chapter in a nutshell, guys. Alright, so that was a pretty good chapter of Kingdom. It's kind of like, for some people it might have been like the greatest chapter of all time, since it was like a Heki-centric chapter. But I think for most people it was just like a good chapter, a good solid chapter. And I'm sure this is a chapter you would probably appreciate more if it was like in a volume. And it kind of just feels like things have been really slow like the last few chapters. Like we haven't made a lot of progression. Because normally Kingdom moves pretty fast. It feels like we've taken like 3 chapters just to start this fight. But coming out of this chapter, we do have some questions. Because the youngest brother that the Figo King is going up against is actually pretty interesting to me. Only because I'm wondering why he's like playing such a reserve role. Like, so I don't know whether he has like a trap laid out for the Figo King or something like that. We also heard from Katari on Heki's battlefield that he thinks Bunen is actually up to something as well. So I really can't wait to see what happens in those 2 situations in particular. But I think one of the biggest things that most people are probably going to be talking about this chapter is, should Heki be able to fight against the Kwangrang on this level? And if so, why did it take him so long to do it? And if you guys don't follow Twale's channel, he does a lot of great Kingdom content and really good live reactions as well. And he made some great points about this very subject. And to be honest, I think most people felt this way. And honestly, I felt the same way at the beginning. But after rereading the chapter and taking a deeper look into the timeline, I came up with 3 reasons why Heki was able to pull off this feat and why it took him so long. The first and most important reason comes from this chapter, when Heki said that after fighting for 8 days, even his men would get used to fighting the Kwangrang. Which is pretty important, because you have to remember, they weren't supposed to be fighting the Kwangrang in the first place. The only reason the Kwangrang are even on this battlefield is because Sun Suiju got them to fight on the first day. And that was kind of like a surprise attack that nobody saw coming. But even then, you would figure it wouldn't take Heki and his group more than a few days to get used to their fighting, right? And that would probably be correct. But we'll never know how long it would have took them, because by the second night, which is my second point, Heki's food stores were burned. And then we see him on the 3rd day of battle acting out of character to try to make up for him losing all the food stores. By Sun Suiju burning all the food, it put Heki under such pressure and made him feel such a time limit that he was actually being very reckless which isn't something that Heki would do. Which brings me to the third point is Heki was unable to get his mind right until they had that meeting in the tent where Yotama's words were able to re-motivate him and get him back on track. So to me, those are the reasons it makes sense, but I can also see the argument the other way. Alright, but moving on, now that the battles have started, I really wanted to give you guys my opinion on who I think could possibly die on Yotama's side of the battlefield, because I don't think we're going to leave this battle unscathed. And to me, there's 5 people who could possibly die. I'm leaving Yotama like completely out of this because I don't think she has any chance of dying. But we have 5 other people who possibly could, which are Baggio, the Figo King, Heki, Katari, or Kitari. And in my opinion, if I had to pick one person out of the 5, I would actually pick Katari. Because in this chapter in particular, it's kind of like foreshadowed that he may have a run-in with Bunin. And in the same conversation, we hear Heki tell him not to be reckless. So I kind of feel like that puts a little bit of a death flag on him, but I could actually see a scenario playing out where Katari may be killed, and you know how Kitari has her thing about Heki where she like really just can't stand him? I can actually see Bunin taking out Katari, and then Heki somehow being able to take out Bunin and gaining Kitari's respect for avenging her brother. And if that's not a good enough reason for you to believe that Katari may die, then simply think about this. Hara has not been known to treat siblings well in this series. And the last thing I really wanted to talk about was last week, man, you guys in the comments section came up with an awesome theory, and I really wanted to shout you guys out, but it was so many of you, and I didn't want to offend anybody by missing somebody's name, because like at least half of the guys in the comments section came up with this theory, and it was definitely nothing I thought up, so I want to make sure to give you guys all the credit. But a lot of people seem to be under the impression that Old Man Impo, the old man we've seen in the previous chapter, may be using the tunnel system to infiltrate Ryoyu. And to be honest, I think this is a brilliant idea, because you have to figure, even though Sensuiju's smart, he doesn't know about all the other tunnel systems. Because when he was asking Rozo initially about them, it was like pulling teeth for Rozo to even give him the intel he did about that one tunnel. So that implies that there is a vast tunnel system. And since they're actually going against another mountain tribe, perhaps Impo and his tribe are able to locate some of these entrances and are currently on a secret mission to take the city. Especially now with a majority of the troops on the battlefield. And perhaps Yotama knew this all along, which is why she set out this attack, knowing that Sensuiju may predict their plans and go all out. And this may be the gamble that Hara's referring to on the final page. But anyway, guys, that about does it for this week's review. Let me know what you guys thought of the chapter in the comments section below. Please leave a like if you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.